Good afternoon. This video, I want to briefly look at a video made by an Anderson guy, noting what Sluder said. He also made a video, I believe the same guy made a video referring to Bill Grady, and Bill Grady saying the same thing, that Old Testament saints weren't really saved. Robert Baker says the same thing. So this seems to be a movement now, because they didn't go immediately to heaven. And what Bill Grady says is basically they didn't have eternal security. They weren't really saved. So, I'm going to see if I can find that video on Bill Grady. But here's Sluder saying it.
How were the Old Testament saints saved? They weren't. How did they get salvation in the Old Testament? They didn't. Bill Grady so aptly put it like this. If I were to look at you and say, or if you were to look at me and say, Brother Sluder, are you saved? And I'd say, yes, I am. How'd you get it? I worked for it. Would you say I have salvation? If I was to say this, I'm saved, but I believe I've got to do good works after or I'll lose it, would you say I'm saved? Then why in the world are we calling the Old Testament saved?
See, they set up an idea that there's a faith work system in the Old Testament as a criteria for salvation, or keeping salvation. Now they're coming back and saying, well, that wouldn't be possible. So the Old Testament saints just weren't saved. Instead of giving up the doctrine and recognizing it could never be faith works, had to be faith alone, they just give up the salvation for the Old Testament saints. They've become lunatics.
We got to clean up our terminology.
You got to clean up your doctrine. To say Old Testament saints weren't saved is a sign of someone mentally unbalanced. But they'd rather give up a correct doctrine, the correct doctrine, rather than recognize that they're wrong on if faith works. So they're holding to faith works, and they're saying, wait a minute, you can't get saved by faith works. You can't keep your salvation by faith works. So it means they were Old Testament saints were never saved. That's what they want you to believe, people. Abraham, a friend of God. David, a man of God's own heart. Moses, a friend of God. That these guys weren't saved. That's now because they're clinging to faith works. Robert Baker believes this. And what William Grady said when I saw this guy's video, I saw him out in the living room, and trying hard to find this guy's Liberty Baptist Church. Now these guys at Emerson, they don't believe that. They believe Old Testament saints went right to heaven, which they didn't. They went to Abraham's bosom. That's why the Lord went down to take captivity captive. They're prisoners of hope. And I have a comment down here, and he said, "Watch my video on Abraham's bosom." But you see how now what's going on here? They're acknowledging that person couldn't be saved with faith that works. So what are they saying? Instead of just throwing out the work system and saying, what's faith alone, with different gospels, they're saying, oh, well, it's faith work system, so they wouldn't have saved. And Bill Grady makes the idea is, well, they weren't eternally secure. That's how faith works is really dealing with the eternal security issue. So without eternal security, they could never have been saved. Wow.
And I'm the first one to raise my hand and say I'm guilty. They weren't saved. They didn't have salvation like me and you.
They weren't saved. And this guy's going to whip into him, rightfully so. Now, he thinks they went to heaven, which is wrong. Samuel came up. He didn't come down, when he went to Saul. And, of course, they deny that was really Samuel. You have to go through a lot of things. I left my comment here about captivity being taken captive. He didn't refer to the captivity taken captive. He says, oh, watch my video on Abraham's bosom. Where he tries to refute Abraham's bosom. But the fact is that Christ went down. And he took captivity captive. It means he came up with somebody. He came up with people. But the reality is they were saved. The Old Testament saints were saved on credit. They were saved on credit. And based on what Christ was going to do on the cross. They had imputed righteousness. They were justified. They were regenerated. But this is what happens, people, when you get into these systems that are false. Faith works. And they double down on them. Robert Breaker triples down on it. Now what they're saying is, okay, yeah, well, yeah, works, you know, they didn't have real eternal security. And they base that on the tribulational saints, you know, they could take the mark, they think, you know, and say, well, you know, see, that's a work. So they really don't have eternal security. So therefore, they're not going to be saved. Well, tribulation martyrs go in heaven. They go to heaven, right to heaven. What are you talking? I mean, they're making the basis of salvation eternal security. Well, if that were the case, tribulation is no eternal security. Why are tribulational martyrs going right to heaven? I mean, wow, these guys. So we deal with that. Just to show you holy cow. But Robert Breaker said that. He said, "Oh yeah, these people aren't really saved." You know, Will Grady's saying that. Also, Gibb is on the same podium with Sluder. I wonder if these guys know that he's a modalist. We got to clean up our terminology. It's not the terminology problem. It's your doctrine. It's your doctrine. And they recognize now that these people couldn't have been saved with a faith work system. So what do? Instead of saying, well, it can't be works, let's be faith alone, they throw out salvation. Are you people crazy? Moses wasn't saved? Holy cow. We'll stop here and put this up. Amen. Thank you.